Right, so now I'm on the rear suspension bag. So rear suspension bag is going to start on page 11, and this has all of these components and then a little plate that I already installed as well. I went ahead just to save time, so it'll be this plate on itself. But we begin with the rear shock tower. So here is the rear shock tower. Now there is a difference in the orientation right on here. So one of the things that you want to keep in mind is that the links are going to be on the opposite side. So the shocks are going to be here. The links, therefore, are going to be on this other side. So if you hold the tower, let's see, there we go. Links are going to attach to here. Now I'm going to go for the bottom hole on those. That's where I'm attaching the links. And the links that I have are these right here. Now one of the things to note is you have this larger end and you have this flatter end. Now if you're installing GTR shocks, for example, onto the front arms, you're going to need these smaller little barrels here for the ends of those shocks. But here we go. So you will need these long screws with the large flat heads. These are going to go in here, so that will go in there. And this flared side, this is going to go in the direction that the shocks are going, so it's going to go that way. That's something to keep in mind. You will be needing a 2.5 millimeter driver. Now we'll go ahead and thread this. Now part of the screw will stick out, and that is normal. If you run a low CG chassis, one of the things to keep in mind is this screw will hit your chassis. So this little guy will be hitting your chassis. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab the other link. And let's see, so I'll go this way. And I will go ahead and install this. Because you're putting a screw into plastic, you do not need thread lock compound. So do not worry about that, just drive it in. And as soon as it's slightly snug, go ahead and stop. Now I'm not exactly sure why Traxxas uses these long screws, but again, go with shorter ones. It makes it easier to install them. If you go with maybe 12 millimeter, it makes it easier to install if you do end up getting an LCG chassis. All right, and that is it for that portion and the links. So at this point, we will be mounting the shock tower onto the transmission. So transmission, if you face the transmission this way, so this is going forward, the links are going to be in the rear and it will mount like this. The screws that we will be installing right now are going to be these two rear screws, and those will be the 12 millimeter screws, which by looking at these, it should be these two. And I have a ruler right here. I'm going to go ahead and measure. And those are the 12 millimeter. I'll grab two of those. And I'm just going to stick one of the screws in there, and then I'll stick the other one in the pocket as well. Just make it easier. All right, so now I can go ahead and hold this in place. And I will need my 2 millimeter driver. I'll just get one started. Then after starting one, then I'll just go to the other. Right in here. Right in here, and the next one. Once we have these two, then we're going to be mounting the rear body system. Now, this is something that's adjustable up and down depending on the body. I'm just going to go with the stock installation, which will be the middle 2 holes. But keep in mind, depending on the body that you are running, you may have to lower or lift this. And these are going to be those button heads, these right here. Sorry, these aren't button heads. What am I talking about? Slipping my mind right now. Let's see. So these will go in here, and you will be using all 4 of them. There we go. Now, if you wanted to lower the body mount below this position, you would have to trim this lower section. So that's something to keep in mind. You will have to cut this on the right-hand side if you want to lower the body more than it is. Now you can get the Proline body mounts. I like the Proline body mounts, they're very good. The only thing, if you bash really hard, take some jumps, and then hard hits, the Proline body mounts actually have a screw because they have these little caps that screw on to hold the body, and those screws will eventually start bending and breaking, so you will actually damage the body mounting system. That's the downside from it, but it does make it easy to adjust the height because they are adjustable. You just remove a screw and then this will slide up and down. So you remove a screw, slides up and down. But the stock Traxxas body mounting system is good. It's very flexible, durable. It's just not adjustable. Or, well, it is adjustable. The rear is, but it's not that easy, right? You have to remove a bunch of screws, move everything up and down. The adjustments are not as fine as the Proline version because it has half the increments, well, half the distance. But I generally keep these. Now, once we mount this, I'm going to go ahead and install the arms. Now, the arms, if you look at the manual and you look at the way they come out of the box, they're always installed rear to front. The thing is, one side will always back out, so you have to reverse that side. Now, at this moment, I don't remember if the right side you want to go front to rear, if it's the left. I believe it's the front that you want to stick all the pins the other way. That way they don't back out. The easiest way is, once you install everything, just see if one of the pins starts backing out after a few runs. And if one of them does, that's the side you want to flip all of the pins, front and rear, on that side. Now we have to install the arms, which is what I was just talking about. We have the arms here, so one of them is right, the other one is left. These are fine. The rear arms generally break because one of the pins starts to back out. That's generally what happens. And when that occurs, only one side will be secured. Let's just say pins here, backs out, and then this will break because the pin's not holding it. That's generally what happens. If you want stronger arms, you can always go with the RPM arms, or you can just get the Traxxas winter plastics, I think extreme duty or heavy duty plastics. Now, if we look at the actual manual, it says to hold the transmission here and to put the right on this side. So I'm going to face it that way to make it easy, so right goes, surprise, on the right side. Now I'm going to grab one of the long pins, so it's going to be a long pin, and because I think it's this way, so the worst thing that can happen is I have all the pins on backwards and then I have to flip them. I'm pretty sure the right side is front to rear, and then the left side is rear to front. But we will find out. All right, there we go. Something that you also want to do is you want to ream these arms just so they move freely. I'll do that off camera. So these, here we go. So now I'm going to place this one, and wait, this one goes this way, which is, go ahead, Now, if you have the LCG, if you install the rear pins front to rear, it won't matter because one of them will try to back out, but because the LCG chassis sits right here, it's just going to hit the chassis, so it's not going to go anywhere beyond that point. But those are the arms. Now we're going to take the rear hub carriers. Now these you really want to replace. This is the Achilles heel. These always crack, or break I should say, when you tumble a lot. So if you're tumbling a lot with the vehicle, you really want to get the RPM knuckles in the rear or the nitro slash knuckles for the rear. Those are actually more robust. And the nitro slash also has more adjustments on there. Proline also makes some for their ProTrack kit, I believe it is. I do have some videos on a ProTrack slash build you can watch. Now grab these shims, these are to protect the bearings. You put one in here and then you drive the shaft through, and then you put the other one on the other side, and this is going to protect the outer bearing from the pin, this pin right in here when it spins. Pin goes in there, then you're going to grab this hex, and the hex, notice that little pattern, that's where it goes, and it is simply going to clip on. Sometimes if you just use the wheel, it'll work. So you can just put the wheel and then press on it. But here we go. So one side is completely assembled, and left or right, doesn't matter. They can go on either ways. And one of the things that you will notice is there's already some thread locking compound in here, so you don't have to worry about that. We'll go ahead and place this in here. Oop, almost forgot the pin. Go. Little recommendation, get the aluminum ones. On the brush system, they're not as critical, but if you go brushless or just more power, these will start to wear. So this hex will start to wear, and then it'll damage the inside of the wheel. This will round, and it'll round the inside of your wheel, and then you have to replace this and the wheel. So might as well just replace these with aluminum. All right, now at this point, we've already heard the snap, everything's good, so we can go ahead and mount these on. And when we mount these on, this will just slide right in here. Now notice there's these little grooves, so you want to line up that inside with the grooves. Big grooves, small grooves. And you have the same thing here, so notice the lands. Actually, you can't see them. They don't really show in the camera. This will go in here, and you're going to follow the same pattern for these screw pins right in here. So if these are going rear to front, then these will go rear to front. So I'll be installing these. And I will install them on the lower hole to lower the truck. If you install them on the upper hole, so there's two holes in there, your truck will be taller. So it just depends on your application. If you're running it a bunch of rocks, things like that, and you need more clearance, run them on the top one so that you can lower this, which means you're raising the truck. But I'm running it on the low one so that I can lift the shafts so I can lower the truck. That is the reason behind it. All right. Let's see, 15. These look like they're 15. These are 15. 15 millimeters will go in here, and they will button everything up. Let's go 2 millimeter driver. And that is it. So there's one side, and we do the exact same thing to the other side. So we're gonna go ahead and grab this, slide it in, place this in here. Make sure that the pin goes on the same hole. So if you went on the lower, go on the lower. If you went on the top one, go on the top one for this other side. Or else your truck is not going to sit level in the rear. go. And that is it. All right, we need the other 15. We'll grab this 15, 2mm driver. And that is it. All right, now that we have this, we're going to go ahead and install the rear skid plate, and then we can install this. You can actually install this first and then sort of slide it in. Now, I actually jumped ahead and I have this already installed, but I'm going to talk about this later on. So don't worry about it. This will simply go in here. One of the things, notice these components, right? These will just key in here. That just goes right in there. And that is it, right? Clicked on, everything's good. So again, high CG, those screws are not going to be an issue. LCG, they will become an issue. Now, at this point, we're going to need our 2mm driver for these. So these are the 4 right here, the really big ones. And then we're going to need a 2mm driver for the 2 screws in the rear. Now those 2 screws in the rear are just to help keep the transmission together. You don't actually need them, but it helps to keep the gearbox in place, or the 2 halves together. That's really it. There we go. If you do have an LCG chassis, this is the moment. This is the time where you would want to install the LCG chassis. So instead of driving this in here, you would be driving it in the LCG. Now, if you're wondering how the high CG and LCG, how they compare, you can watch some of my videos. I do have some videos comparing the two. One of them's just in a car park or a parking lot. And I have the 2, so you can see how the high CG just sort of leans. It looks really cool, it just leans a lot. And then I also have some videos of races, spec/races, high CGs and LCGs in there. And you can see the difference between the 2 as well. So go ahead and watch those videos. And hopefully that gives you an idea. So the high CG is just cool looking. LCG, that one handles a lot better. So it just depends on your purpose, what you're using it for. Purpose is something very, very important in RC car. So now I'm going to take this rear piece, and this will just slide in the back. Slides back here. And then we're going to need these long screws. Now the longest screw is going to go at the very bottom. So if we look at these holes right here, it's going to go right in here. Now this slipped, there we go. Now this one may bend, don't be surprised if it does, it will. And then this one will go in there, right in there. So we have 1 and 2. So after some impacts, just landing on the rear bumper, the screw that I'm driving in now, that one will bend after a while, so don't be surprised if it does again. All right, that is it. So now the rear bumper. All right, so we have this piece here and we have this. So these are going to go right in here, and there is one correct way and one wrong way. So if you will quickly notice if you're doing it right or not. So notice here, this is the wrong way. See how it points up? So you know it has to go this way, and it points down. So that's something to keep in mind. All right, here we go. So sorry about that. I actually had to go to the door. I got some RC parts. So at first I was a little upset, but then realized what it was. All right, so we're gonna have these right in here. Then we want to go with the 15 millimeters. So we have these right over here, and we're just gonna slide one in, slide one over here, and I'm just kind of holding it this way. And we'll go, oops, it shifted. All right. Go. Now there are other bumpers that you can get. I really would say just save your money. The stock bumper is a very good bumper, but if you want to spend money on something else, go for it. I just don't really see a point. I mean, these will if you do wheelies, things like that, they'll scrape. So regardless of which bumper, you'll be scraping the bumpers. And these are flexible enough as it is. So if you manage to break one, you were gonna break it. So just get another one, another stock one. Right, good. So we have the bumper now assembled, so now we can actually introduce this, and we're going to be using these 4 screws right in here, which will go right in there. So these big ones. All right. Then just begin with one side. And I'm going to begin with this bottom. So they're going to go in these holes right in here. I'm just going to drop it in here. All right, we'll go here, and here we go. And we have this one right over here. And now I'll do the 4 on this other side. Now I do recommend that you run the rear bumper. If you do not, then all impacts are going to go into the transmission case, that little gearbox. You may damage that. It's not an expensive part. It's just a lot of work to replace it. That's the only reason. Right, there we go. Now, let's see. Okay, I'm missing this screw right here, so I need to install that one, which is a 15, it's a 12 actually. That's a 12. All right, so this screw goes here. This is the 12 millimeter. I almost forgot that. So don't forget this little screw here. This is the 12. noticed it when I felt the bumper, and then I looked down and I saw 5 screws instead of 4. All right, that is it. All right, so there is the rear bumper. So now the only thing we have left is just installing these shocks. That's what these 4 screws are for, and we need those 2 longer ones right in here. So it's just the 4 screws, and these are going to mount through the front, and it's a 2mm driver. Now on the LCG, you want to install the shock on the arm first and then install the shock tower. If you install the shock tower first and then the suspension arm, the problem that you're going to run into is your driver may be hitting the chassis and you may not have enough space to spin your driver quickly and comfortably. So that's something that you want to consider. And let's see, I'm going to go ahead and do the other one on the other side. I'm not concerned about the bottom. There is an orientation I will talk about. The reason why I'm not concerned is because I can always spin the shaft. There we go. Perfect. All right, now I can just pick the position. For these, I believe the sway bar goes into one of, actually it goes on the other side, so it doesn't matter. But I want this to be low for the purpose of this truck, so I'm gonna go all the way to the outside. Now rear shock tower, I don't remember if well, the Nitro Slash doesn't fit anyway on this, but if you do get the Proline, I believe it's a True Track or Pro Track, that one has more adjustments. Now the issue with it though is each side is 1 centimeter farther, so your shocks are going to be a little more upright, which is fine depending on your application. But it means that you may have to get some shorter shocks for the application. Now this one I installed correctly, and here we go. So the flared side, this is what I meant, so that flared side, that's going to go toward the arm. There we go. Right, and there's the entire rear end completely assembled, all suspension complete. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you have not, and I'll catch you in the next one.
What? Oh, my hair! My arm! My rod!